Welcome back. In this video, we're going to go over scroll pagination using the list elements. All right. Currently, I'm in the app builder and I have a list that I've been working with in our list series. This list in its current state is server-side paginated. If you want to see how we did this, watch the last video, the server-side pagination with lists. So just a quick overview. I'm currently using the random data API as my external data source. I'm simply just using this random user with a size of 10 to populate my table. I have a function that I've written called getListUserData. It's currently overwriting the user list app data field and is hard coding a total count of 50, right? If I jumped into my list, I have, as you can see, it's binded to the user list. We have server-side pagination set to true. I've mapped my total row count to the user list total count field. I have a data fetch trigger value. If you want to know what this is, just watch the last video, it's covered. So what we're trying to do in this video is, can we convert this to scroll pagination, right? So you might have a requirement to, have this fetch new data as users scroll. So if you were to look at, forums or like chat applications or, like your social media applications, as you scroll, right, new data is being pulled in. And that is kind of what we're trying to replicate using lists in the app builder here. Right now we have the standard non-scroll pagination. So we have the tabs, right? So we're going to change this out to the scroll pagination, and it's extremely simple to do. All right. Before we get moving any further, I'm just going to point out we are using the list data fetch event to pull in new records. All right. So to change this to scroll pagination is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to go in here and turn scroll pagination on. All right. So now it's on. It's no longer the block pagination. That has the tab pagination, right? The standard pagination. As you can see, the pagination wrapper element has disappeared because now our pagination is going to be based on scroll, the scroll event. All right. So obviously, to have a scroll event, the list has to be scrollable, right? If you looked into the styling of our list, right? If you look into the list data row wrapper, as you can see, we have a height of 0, meaning that it's always going to take the height of the children elements. So let's go ahead and put a height in here because it's required to have a scroll bar. All right. Let's go ahead and put a height here of, let's say, 700 pixels. All right, perfect. Now I have a scroll bar. So because I have a scroll bar, I can basically have the pagination trigger. So if I were to just open up the dev tools, if I just scroll to the bottom, as you can see, it triggered, right? It triggered multiple times actually. But if you notice, nothing really changed, right? It's triggering, but my data is not necessarily changing. I don't see any more data than I had here before. I still have 9 records. And that is because in the function that we are using to set our data, if I were to go back to that function real quick, get list user data, it's always overwriting the existing data, right? So what we want to do here is this. We are simply going to just add this new data to the existing data that we have, all right? So real quickly, I'm just going to switch this to code, so it's going to be faster. So you can use the no code and code together. That's one of the beauties of this system. So I'm going to go here and just going to map into this. I'm going to say parameter dot app underscore data, right? So we're going to map to our user list. So since this is going to be an array, let me fix that really quick. And I'm going to use the spread operator to basically concatenate these two arrays together. Then I'm going to concatenate in our variable. So all caps variable dot. I'm just going to paste that in. All right. So now what's happening is this is basically going to be pulling in the new records and adding it to the existing records. So another thing to note is that the user list total count is practically useless when it comes to scroll pagination. We can leave it here, but it has no effect. All right. I'm going to save this and I am going to deploy. All right. Now that I've saved and deployed, if I refresh my application, the table is going to get that deployed version of that function. All right. So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to scroll again. And as you can see, we've basically pulled in 10 new records. I can see the existing records, but I can see the new records, right? 11, 12. And as I keep going, it's pulling in more records. As I keep going, it's pulling in more records, right? As you can see, we have transactions being run. In this case, our transactions are coming back fairly quickly. It's 88 milliseconds, 91 milliseconds, right? And this is just because we're using this random data API. There's no real query. If you have like a real database, we're making a real query. Sometimes maybe the query is inefficient, or sometimes you're dealing with massive data sets, whatever the case may be. It might be a little slower. And if you notice, sometimes this event might trigger multiple times. You could always use some state management in your application. So maybe when one set of data is being called, right? If the function triggers again, you would just have some logic in there that says, hey, as long as we're still loading one set of data, we're not going to start a new load, so you can manage how this works. So it's bug free. As you can see, it just triggered again, right? And that's because of we just scrolled, right? So it has a very, very happy trigger, and it's up to you to throttle the effect. All right. So that in a nutshell is basically scroll pagination. Okay. It's going to refresh the page. There we go. We have 10 records. I'm going to scroll. It basically pulls in the next set of records. It's pulled in the next set. It's pulled in the next set. All right. Works like a charm. All right. So that's it for scroll pagination. See you in the next video.